want to know how we can serve our community, so we have a list of things based on your response. It will help us to do a very good analysis and find out what are the most threats to the community, and we will see how best we can serve to ensure that we create better living standards for persons and alleviate the suffering that many people are suffering within the environs of Mandeville. So please help us by returning the surveys. Our ushers are waiting on you, all our visitors that have been given the surveys, to return them to us today. If you are coming for the first time and you're a visitor, you will be given a very special package. And in that package, you will have a book. You will also have a magazine, but you will also have that survey. Please feel free to turn it in to us, even though it is your first night. You can also grade the Barbara O'Neill program and let us know how it has been a blessing to you, and then you can turn that survey in this evening. So we're going to ask all our ushers to ensure that all the visitors that have been given surveys, that they are returned before you leave this evening. You can do so when we are collecting the offering. At that time, we're going to ask everyone just to work with us. We will not be asking those who are selling to sell at that time, because we want to make sure that all our surveys are collected. So we're going to ask you, when Barbara O'Neill finishes her presentation, that the sale will just hold for a minute until we collect all the surveys within the church. Then now you can go on the outside and then do all your sales. Is that clear, everyone? Okay, so please work with us. Also, we want you to know that tomorrow we will not be having any sales of any item. All sales will be closed tomorrow evening as we share together in a wonderful, blessed Sabbath. So we ask you to ensure that you do all your purchasing this evening. However, Saturday evening will be the final night that we will be having sales relating to Barbara O'Neill's books and her DVDs. But I want you to know that you must come with US dollars. We will not accept any Jamaican dollars. The reason being, she leaves early in the morning. She will not be able to go to the bank or to change the Jamaican currency to US currency. So she will only accept US currency. That's tomorrow, that's Saturday evening, right? The final sales, but it must be in US currency. And please remember the cost again. For the DVDs, it is US $90. And for the book, it is US $24. Come with your change as well. Again, tonight is question and answer, and Saturday will be our final question and answer segment. Write your questions in the box. If it is not answered, we will speak with Barbara and see how best we can have her email information and then provide it to you. So what we're asking you to do as well, if you have questions, please put a contact number on your question. In case your question is not answered and you feel that it is a very important question and you want it to be answered, please work with us to have your number, your email, so that we will pass it over to Barbara, and then probably some form of contact can be made regarding your question via email, the email way. So work with us on that as well. Please remember as well that tomorrow's service is going to be very important, as we are going to address two very important subjects that is affecting a lot of persons. One is sleep, the other is osteoporosis. Osteoporosis. Did I say that right? Osteoporosis. All right. You can get it from me. You know what I'm talking about. All right. Now, those two subjects we'll be dealing with tomorrow. You know anyone who is affected with any of these, please invite them to come tomorrow evening service, because it's going to be very interesting. And I want you to know too, we will be having a very special testimony at this time, because we have a lady, a Christian young lady from the Northern Caribbean University Church that have consented to share a testimony, only 5 minutes maximum, with all of us, as how God has blessed her life and she has experienced healing through practicing the 8 laws of health. And so at this time, we're going to invite our sister to come and share with us her testimony at this time.
Good evening, everyone. They're giving me a very hard task to do, because it's 7 years I have to take 5 minutes to explain to you. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it, so you're going to have to Just use your braids tonight to see what I left out you just put in. 6 years ago, I was diagnosed with lymphoma. And that's the cancer that is in all your lymph nodes. So it was all over my body. When I was diagnosed, I didn't know nothing about cancer. I heard people having it. I never have it in my family or anywhere, anybody close to me. So I was nervous. I was scared. I stayed home for 2 weeks, didn't say anything or do anything to any, just in a shell. But I was a Christian, and I'm still is. And I went to God because in my church, my pastor said he's a great physician. And I didn't want anybody else to look after me other than the great physician. So I turned over my life and my being and everything pertaining to my cancer into his hands. So from that time, I have never seen a doctor. I've not gone back to a doctor. I've never seen one. I have several tests to show what I have because I went in, did an operation, and it was all over. But God has been good to me because the first thing I did was turning my entire life to God. And he came on board and he just tell me one day at a time the different herbs, the herbalist that I should go and visit. Different people come on board and start telling me, what I should do and what I should not do. But I listened to that quiet, still voice, and he was just talking to me every day and instructing me. My first thing was to give my whole entire life to him. I did that. The second thing he said, I must go and tell everybody that I have done wrong. Sorry. Ask for forgiveness so I could cleanse my entire being. I did that. And I just keep on doing one step at a time. And because I was an Adventist, and all the programs some of the programs that come here and see you all over the place, I was blessed because people keep on telling me the different herbs that God had provided for us. So I really did do an entire lifestyle change. It might sound to some people that I stopped eating meat entirely and stopped doing that. I did not do that. I take it one day at a time. So if it was 5 days out of the week, it becomes 4, and then it becomes 3, and then become 2, and then I start living with that. But I also have a daughter that was sick. And because of my illness and the stuff that I was eating, it was able to help her as well. So she was getting over her situation. I was getting over my situation. And people come up to me from time to time and ask me, is the cancer gone? It's a very hard question to answer, but still it's easy, because up to this morning I was asked this. And I turned to the person and I said, listen, I'm not feeling the lumps anymore. I am not feeling that degree of pain anymore. It's 6 years with lymphoma. I'm still standing. So I have to give God all the glory. I have to give him all the praise. And to be in this situation where I will say to people, I'm happy I had cancer. Because I have used what God gave me and to make it into a positive. I stripped down my life. They said, if your right hand offend you, cut it off. When my right hand offend me, I cut it off. I went that drastic. So there's people in my life now that is not in my life now that was there before. There's friends in my life that has gone. There is family members that has completely don't want to have anything to do with me. And then there's church people, sad to say, that they will just look at me and say, she didn't have cancer, she couldn't be standing. But my answer to people is, I'm a child of God. God don't make nobody ugly. God gave me a completely beautiful body. I end up having something that I have to limp on it, but I'm happy with my limp. I said that limp keeps me closer connected to God. It reminds me every day that this is what God wants me to do. And then I look at the situation and I say, because of my cancer, I am better. I smile more. I have a lot of problems going on in my life, but I can honestly say, even with the problems, even with the situation, even with my circumstances, I'm happy. I can smile. And nobody will ever look at me and say, you have cancer or you're going through all of these difficulties, because when I'm on the road, I'm representing my God. And so I smile and I laugh, and when people ask me if everything is okay, I'm fine, because my God has my problem in his hands and he's working it out. I know the 5 minutes has gone, but it's a long story. Could not been told everything that happened to me, but God be the glory. I'm still standing. I'm still praising God. My daughter is better for it because she has gotten over her illness as well. And I have no other reason more than serving God, because I know if I had gone to a doctor, I would not have been here. If I have taken the regular medicine, I don't have anything against doctor. They're for a purpose. When you meet accident, when you're having a baby, they have their purpose. But the purpose was not to take a situation, a thing that is happening to me personally, a sickness like cancer, that's a virus that is living inside of my body, and to let me go down the grave. So I didn't go to no doctor. There's no man on earth I know that could have cured my cancer, no matter how educated they are, because a whole lot of educated people come to me, and right now I can laugh and I can say, I have the treatment. I know where I get my cancer. And people, we have to take our own lives in our hand. My cancer came, I have my small son, he's 17 now, and they gave me 5 bottles of drips, blood. Your body don't, my body was not made to take all that foreign matter and to deal with it. So I end up with cancer. So I know where it's coming from. I know where God is using it to do, and I'm blessed for it. Thank you for listening. It's short, but God be the glory.
Thank you so much. We're getting ready to hear a presentation by Barbara O'Neill, but we want you to be here this Saturday. You'll be hearing from someone who had a tumor in the brain and a lifestyle change and everything and what happened. I won't say anything. You'll hear that testimony. You'll also hear, hopefully my friend comes from Kingston, an autoimmune disease that was said to be incurable. And when you see him standing, sharing all the tests that he did, you will hear the power of the health ministry and God's power that he has given to us. Right? So you will hear that this Saturday. You don't want to miss this. You really don't want to miss this. So please invite your friends and come and join with us. At this time now, I turn over to Barbara O'Neill.
Testing. I've got a voice. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to take you on a journey this evening. I'm going to take you on a journey through your gastrointestinal tract. Proverbs 16 verse 7 says, knowledge is easy to him that understands. When you understand how your gastrointestinal tract works, you automatically have the knowledge how to treat it. Last night we looked at a missing link with many people who are not well, whose body is not functioning well. But tonight, I don't think this is a missing link. This is a very real part of the human body, but so misunderstood. And the writer Ellen White, she says we should show respect to the delicate organs of digestion. Many people don't. And many people are not well because the plumbing system doesn't work well. If the plumbing system in your house starts to clog up, you've got a problem. And I know Florence Nightingale, when she went to the hospital in Scutari, the first thing she did was she got men to fix the plumbing. The plumbing must work well or you're in trouble. And so the plumbing in the human body. So let's begin our journey where it all starts, and that is the mouth. The mouth is the only area in the whole of the gastrointestinal tract that we have say over. We have say over what goes in. We have say over when it goes in. We have say over how much goes in. We have say over how long it's actually in the mouth, whether it's 3 chews or 30 chews. And we have say over the environment of entry. And having say over those 5 points influences the whole of the gastrointestinal tract all the way down. It's about 8 meters long, so it's a long journey. Anything that goes into our gastrointestinal tract is not part of you or me until it gets broken down to tiny substances and then goes into the blood, then it becomes part of you and me. So let's have a look at the mouth. The pH in the mouth is an alkaline pH. And there are just 2 enzymes that are released in the mouth. One is lingual lipase. And lingual lipase is an enzyme that's released from the sublingual glands under the tongue. And lingual lipase breaks down the fat that is grown predominantly on your island. What is that? It is the coconut. So what lingual lipase breaks down is saturated fat. So yes, that can be palm oil, that can be cocoa butter, that can be shea butter, can be butter. But saturated fat is unique from all other fats in that the breakdown begins in the mouth. And that's one of the reasons that it is such a good fat. Have you been told to keep away from it because it'll cause heart disease? I trust the night before last I showed you very clearly that saturated fat and cholesterol do not cause heart disease. Remember, there is no proof. And your ancestors ate coconut 3 times a day and they didn't have heart disease. So there's the history. So your coconut, your saturated fat in the coconut breaks down in the mouth. There is another enzyme that's released in the mouth, and that is ptyalin. Ptyalin is a salivary enzyme. That I shouldn't be there, that I should be there. Ptyalin is a salivary amylase, and it breaks down starch. And basically your starches are your carbohydrates. It initiates starch digestion, but it is not in the mouth in a baby. You see, a baby has no teeth. And the first teeth that a baby gets is 4 at the top and 4 at the bottom, and they're called milk teeth because that's all baby should have, is milk. It is also taste time. When the baby can sit, when the baby can put their hand to their mouth, that's about 7.5 months, then these 4 teeth, little by little, start to appear. But remember, they're milk teeth, so baby's main food should be milk. It's also taste time. This is when you can give a baby a piece of cucumber, a piece of pineapple to suck on, celery stick to suck on, and you'll find that that little one will spend half an hour eating that little bit, and that allows you to eat your meal. And you'll find by the end of the meal there are a lot of little bits of cucumber all around the table and often all over the floor. Remember, it's taste time, and it's a very important time because baby is learning to chew. Now the next teeth that come are the molars. Now they come back here, and when the molars are fully through, then salivary amylase ptyalin is released, not before. Now what do molars do? They grind. What do we grind? Grain. So baby has no ability to break down starch until the molars are through. When do the molars appear? Anywhere between 14 and 22 months of age. And what are many mothers told to give their babies at 6 months? Cereal? Rice cereal? What's that? Pure starch. And a lot of mothers are told, give your baby rice cereal 6 o'clock at night and they'll sleep through the night. Oh, and isn't that attractive? You know why they're sleeping through the night? They're knocked out. They've got this lump of glug in their stomach that they cannot digest. And this is where malabsorption syndrome can develop in the gut because of starch too young as babies. Let me give you a story to illustrate. A lady emailed me from America. She said, my little boy, we'll call him Tim. My little boy Tim is 10 months age. He's thin, he's got a big stomach. I began to investigate. Was he preemie? Oh, he was very preemie. He was nearly 3 months preemie. So he's going to be, that's premature, he's going to be a little bit slower than other babies. How many teeth does he have? Oh, 3. Is he breastfed? Yes. What does he eat? Oh, he eats cereal and bread and pasta and potatoes. I said, that baby has no ability to break down that starch. And do you remember what the stomach was like? Distended and bloated. I said, I explained to her why. I explained to her the teeth, the enzymes. She said, what will I feed him? I said, always feed him breast milk before you feed him food. Because remember, milk teeth, number one food should be milk. I said, you can give him a little banana, very ripe banana. Green banana's pretty starchy, but the very ripe banana, all the starch has been converted to simple sugars. Bit of steamed broccoli, maybe a little bit of mashed sweet potato. The starch in the sweet potato is all converted to simple sugars in the cooking process. So fruits, simple vegetables. She emailed me 3 weeks later. She said the stomach has gone right down and he's starting to put on a little weight. She was very happy. Things were going very well till the baby was 14 months age. She emailed me. She said, Barbara, it's just terrible. My baby stopped crawling. Now, he'd only just started crawling. Remember, he's a preemie baby. They're a bit later. She said, my baby stopped crawling. My baby won't eat a thing. All my baby wants to do is breastfeed. So I investigated. Is your baby teething? Yes. And the baby's actually teething the molars. I said, don't worry about it. A lot of babies stop eating properly when they're teething. He just wants to feed. Well, at least he's feeding. Don't worry about it. She emailed back and she said, what if he gets brain damage? And I thought, what? Where's this coming from? And she said, and what if he starts losing all his muscles? Well, I'm scratching my head. I thought, where's this coming from? And it was about 2 weeks later, a man contacted me. He said, I am a scientist in Loma Linda University. You've been dialoguing with my daughter. This was the girl. We're very worried about her. She will not listen to us, but she listens to you. Please get her to go to the hospital and have the baby tested. Have the baby tested. How are they going to test the baby? Blood? They're going to take blood. How traumatic is that going to be for the baby? And if they decide the baby's not getting enough, what are they going to do? Put an IG tube down? Do you know how traumatic that is for a baby? Put an IV drip. Have you ever tried to put a needle in a baby's vein? I said, this would be very traumatic. I said, let me take you 100, 200, 300, 500, 1,000 years ago. Babies did not eat food. It's only a recent phenomenon. Do you know what that means? Einstein, Galileo, Bach, Mozart. They weren't fed food as babies. And did they get brain damage? They're brilliant minds. My son James, he's 41 now. He's very big, my son James. He's a master builder. He's a musician. He ate no food till he was 16 months of age. That was normal all that time ago. He said, I'm very worried that the baby's getting brain damage, and my wife is a physiotherapist and she's very concerned that the muscles are deteriorating. Then I discovered where these messages were coming from. This poor mum is getting this pressure from her parents. I said, God made breast milk perfect. Does God make mistakes? And it's perfect for the 2-week-old baby. And then it's perfect for the 2-month-old baby. And it's perfect for the 1-year-old baby. And it's perfect for the 3-year-old baby. And you know, in Bible times, they were often fed till they were 5. Okay, he said. 3 weeks later, I get a message from the girl. The teeth are through. He's crawling. He's eating food. Thank you. And then I get an email from the father. Well, he's the grandfather. Thank you so much. Can I give you something? If you want, I've got $500 in my account. And I took that as a great appreciation. Yeah? And that's why I say, you know, investigate. Of course the baby's not going to be eating much when they're a little sick or when they're teething. You know, as long, and this baby was eating breast milk and it's got everything that it needs. But an illustration to show you the importance of ptyalin being present to break down starch. So now we come through a little double layered valve. It's called the cardiac sphincter. And it's the little valve where the food goes through to go into the stomach. Now we have a muscle that sweeps under our ribs called the diaphragm. You familiar with your diaphragm? And when you breathe with your abdominal muscles, your diaphragm goes in and out. But many people today have weak abdominal muscles, have poor posture, and the diaphragm doesn't work at all. And the diaphragm can get weak because it's just like any other muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. So when people have weak diaphragms, that can weaken that cardiac sphincter. And it can be the cause of reflux. You've heard of reflux or heartburn? Reflux or heartburn is when the acid, because the stomach is the only acid part of the body, it's when the acid starts to come up. I have met people who have ulcerated esophaguses from years and years of acid coming up. And so what the doctor gives them is antacid. That doesn't make any sense to me, because acid is required to break down your protein, as you'll see in a minute. To kill the acid, to stop it coming up, is like shooting all the horses because they get out of the gateway. Just shut the gate. Just shut the gate. How do we shut the gate? You shut the gate by strengthening your abdominal muscles, breathing with your abdomen, standing tall. We are princes and princesses of the Most High God. We need to stand tall. In fact, a lovely description of Daniel. Remember Daniel? Daniel in the lion's den? Let's go back to Daniel as a captive and he wouldn't eat the king's food and wine. Well, Ellen White gives a comment because this young man and his 3 friends, they refused to eat the rich food off the king's table. They wanted to eat simple food, pulse and water. That's fruits, vegetables, legumes. And after 3 years, these 4 young men were 10 times smarter than all the wise men in the kingdom. And this comment, I love it. It's 1 sentence on Daniel. The erect form, got that? The erect form, the fair countenance, the undimmed senses, the untainted breath, also many certificates of good habits, insignia of the nobility with which nature honours those who are obedient to her laws. So the erect form, you'll find in a fit body there will be an erect form. In fact, one massage therapist told me, you can tell the strength of the body by the strength of the core. And most people don't realise the ramifications of a strong abdominal core, and we looked at it a bit yesterday. When it's weak, that can even cause prolapses and a whole lot of other problems. But now we're looking at another area, and that is this little valve here. So to strengthen that muscle, to shut the gate so that the acid isn't coming up into the esophagus, stand tall, breathe deeply, strengthen those abdominal muscles, Have breakfast like a king, lunch like a queen, and tea like a pauper. In Australia, many people have breakfast like a pauper, lunch like a pauper, and the tea is the king and the queen together. And then they lay down, and gravity causes this huge load in their stomach to push, which is weakening the cardiac sphincter. It's called the cardiac sphincter because it's very close to the heart. In fact, you talk to anyone working in casualty, doctors, nurses, often people come in thinking they're having a heart attack, and it's actually reflux because it's so close because of the pain that it can cause. Because it's a muscle, when it tightens, it opens. When it's relaxed, it's closed. So if someone's stressed out, their muscles tighten, that can open it. So to heal reflux, have breakfast like a king, lunch like a queen, tea like a pauper. And remember, sometimes paupers don't eat. Don't drink with the meals, because that will water down your hydrochloric acid. You want a nice acid stomach to be able to effectively break down your protein. Dogs have 10 times the hydrochloric acid of humans. Do you ever hear of a dog getting reflux or heartburn? It's not the acid, and they need that acid because high acid is needed to break down that very heavy protein called meat. And by the way, a dog's gastrointestinal tract is only 1 metre long, so it's in and out quick. Ours is 8 metres long. So let's come into the stomach. The stomach is the only part of the body that should be acid. And to understand what happens in the stomach, let me draw the lining of the stomach. There are big folds, and these folds are all lined with gastric glands. And 2/3 of those gastric glands release mucus. And mucus is about 99% water. But what mucus does is it forms a thick mucus lining on the stomach to protect from the strong acid. Now these glands down here, they release pepsinogen, and they also release hydrochloric acid. And pepsinogen and hydrochloric acid unite and release pepsin. And pepsin is the enzyme that breaks down protein. Now pepsin is not released from here, or it could start to break down your stomach lining. God designed it so that the pepsinogen's released and the hydrochloric acid is released, and that connects only in an acid environment. That's why it's so important our stomach be acid. And the pepsin is what breaks down the protein. If someone says to me, I've got a very acid stomach, I say, fantastic. It's supposed to be. In fact, I've never met anyone with a too acid stomach. Someone may think they've got a too acid stomach because it keeps coming up. But remember, the problem's not the acid, the problem's the little gate there. And remember, God did the best He could. He made a 2-layered one. So it's often years in the making of eating late at night, stressed. Have you started your exercise program? Strengthening that body. So it's all of those little bits and pieces. We get back once again to our New Start program. Something else is released down here. It's the intrinsic factor. These are the parietal glands down here. They release pepsinogen, they release hydrochloric acid, and they release the intrinsic factor. So what's the intrinsic factor? The intrinsic factor is required to absorb vitamin B12. Vitamin B12 is a very interesting and so misunderstood issue. B12 is a bacteria. You'll find it in rainwater tanks, you'll find it in homegrown vegetables, you'll find it in organically grown root vegetables. In fact, when you wake up in the morning, there's usually a bit in your mouth. It's a bacteria. Don't clean your teeth before breakfast. Huh? Notice what it said about Daniel. The erect form, the firm elastic step, the untainted breath. That was another one. When your gastrointestinal tract is working well, you won't have that really bad mouth in the morning. And how many people wake up and, I've got to clean my... It should not be. And we're going to go way, way, way down deep and discover why that is so. So the first thing you should do when you wake up, there should be water by everyone's bed. First thing you do is drink water. And guess what? You'll get a little bit of B12 going down there. B12 is found in the foods that I mentioned. But in food, B12 is linked with an R protein. Let me give the illustration with my fingers. Here's the R protein, here's the B12. In food, B12 is linked with an R protein. When it comes into the stomach and there's a nice good supply of hydrochloric acid, it releases the B12 from the R protein. And now the B12 starts to travel down through the small intestine with intrinsic factor. Here's intrinsic factor. They're not connected yet, so they're floating down together. And at the last part of the small intestine, the ileum, intrinsic factor and B12 unite. And once they unite, they can be absorbed up into the body. And they're absorbed into the enterohepatic circulation. Hepatic means liver. This is a circulatory system between the liver and the ileum, which carries the B12. You can have no B12 in your diet for 30 years before you show a deficiency. And meat eaters and vegans alike can have B12 problems. Most people have B12 problems because they don't have enough intrinsic factor, or they don't have enough hydrochloric acid. Because remember, the hydrochloric acid's required to release the B12 from the R protein. Why would someone have low hydrochloric acid or low intrinsic factor? Because they're eating all day long, because they're having their main meal at the end of the day, exhausting their gastric juices, because they're drinking with their meals, which waters down the hydrochloric acid. What does water do to acid? It waters it down. We should be drinking our water between meals. We should be stopping drinking water about a half an hour before the meal, and we should resume drinking about an hour and a half to 2 hours after the meal. And that allows that acid environment for the breakdown of our protein. In my book, Self-Heal by Design, I have a chapter, and it's on the stomach, and I call it Hydrochloric Acid, the Stomach's Secret Weapon, because not only is hydrochloric acid required to connect with pepsinogen to release pepsin to break down protein, hydrochloric acid is antibacterial. Hydrochloric acid is antifungal. Hydrochloric acid is anti-yeast. What a wonderful God we serve. There's something in our stomach so that if we eat food that's a little bit bad, the hydrochloric acid can deal with it. So the only people really that get food poisoning are people with low hydrochloric acid. No wonder when someone says, I've got a very acid stomach, I say, fantastic. Have you ever seen dogs eat rotten meat and they don't get sick? That's because their hydrochloric acid is so strong. It deals with it. So God designed our body with an antibacterial, antifungal, anti-yeast substance in our stomach, so that if we happen to eat something that's got a little something on that we don't realise, it'll deal with it. So the enzyme in the stomach is pepsin. And pepsin breaks down protein. And that is the only thing, the only food group that's broken down in the stomach. What can you do if you have low hydrochloric acid? And how would you know if you had low hydrochloric acid? If you have low hydrochloric acid, It's 5-6 hours after the meal and you still feel full. If you had very good hydrochloric acid, digestion would happen very, very quickly. So that's one of the signs. Also, another sign can be bloating, because the food's not getting broken down, it's actually fermenting a little bit in the stomach. There's some of the signs of low hydrochloric acid. So how can you boost it? Dr. Kellogg, very famous doctor from the mid-1800s, who wrote whole encyclopedias on health, he says just a little third of a glass of very hot water just before the meal, just before your meal. Because it's so hot, it's absorbed very quickly, and the hot water in the stomach wakes up the glands that produce the enzymes. But what we do at our retreat, we make a hot bitter tea. So for people who have stomach problems, we give them a hot bitter tea, and that tea is also listed in my book, under the liver chapter. Or you can put the juice of a lemon in a little bit of hot water. Or you can put 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne pepper in a little water. You probably wouldn't want to put it in hot water because it's hot enough as it is. That will also wake up the stomach, but it's also very important not to drink with the meals. It's also very important to leave a gap between the meals, because the fact is, and there's much research over the years to show this, that digestion takes 3 to 4 hours. And then the stomach loves a rest of 1 hour. So that means we should be leaving 5 to 6 hours between meals. Interesting to note that the current vogue today in the nutrition world is time-restricted eating. And time-restricted eating says that we should be eating 2 meals in a 6-hour period. What they suggest, and Dr. Michael Mosley is one of the authors, there are several authors that are pushing this, he says have a main meal at 1 o'clock and then have another main meal at 7 o'clock. But the problem with that is, where are you going to get your energy all morning? And the other problem is, you're going to sleep with a stomach full of food. So what we do at our retreats is we have breakfast at 7:30 and then we serve the main meal either 1:32. And that works very, very well. That's how I raised my children. And they loved it because I homeschooled all my children. They could get all their school done by lunchtime, because lunchtime was 2 o'clock. No afternoon school. That was great. There's only one way that you can do this. And your meal must be high fibre. Because what fibre does, it slowly releases the glucose. Generous protein. Because protein is the only food that's broken down in the stomach. And your best proteins, your cleanest burning fuel proteins, are your legumes. One man said, well, they're not cleaning burning fuel for me. They create a lot of wind. I said, well, it's important to soak them. And then it's important to rinse them. And then it's important when they're half cooked to rinse them again. You know all the froth that comes up? Guess what that is? You guessed it. There's your wind. You want that. It's dirty water. So when I've half cooked my legumes, I rinse them again, and then I put them in the sauce. And that might be a rich tomato sauce. It might be a Indian dal. It might be a... what I did at my daughter's place last week, I just blended cashews and water and made a milk, and then put the cooked garbanzos or chickpeas and broccoli in that. How simple is that? And that was delicious. The kids kept saying, can Nana come and visit us more? This is delicious. So there's so many things you can do. And on your island, you can use the coconut milk, because I think it's a lot cheaper than cashews. So generous proteins in your legumes. Yes, your nuts are very expensive, but I noticed the nuts that were out here on the table yesterday, they were cheaper than the ones in the supermarket. And seeds, pumpkin seeds, sesame seeds, sunflower seed, they're a lot cheaper. And when you have your pumpkins, save your pumpkin seeds, dry them out. Did you know that the pumpkin seed is higher in protein than any meat? 40.8 grams of protein to a cup of pumpkin seeds. Now we're not going to eat a cup of pumpkin seeds, but, you know, a quarter of a cup. And healthy fats. And the healthy fats really are the fats that came from the hand of the Creator. So the healthy fats are your nuts, your avocado. Now, I've discovered that you call them pears, yeah? And coconut. Coconut in all its forms. Coconut oil, coconut cream, coconut milk. Coconut in every form. When your meal contains these three food groups, you will easily be able to go the distance, which is 5 hours between meals. And what I find very interesting is people think when their stomach's empty they've got to eat, but you know your nutrients are not absorbed in your stomach. They're absorbed down here. So even when your stomach's empty, nutrients are still going into your blood and into your tissues. So now we come out of the stomach, and there's a little valve at the end of the stomach. It's called the pyloric sphincter. And the pyloric sphincter is closed when we wake up in the morning because there's nothing in our stomach, unless you had a huge meal the night before. Poor old stomach, it wants to sleep when you sleep. But when you have a large meal at night, it can't sleep, because if it does sleep, what's in there is going to start to rot and poison you. Most people that don't eat breakfast because they're not hungry, because they had a large meal the night before. And this little valve, it closes as soon as food comes into the stomach. And then as the digestion starts to break the food down, little by little it opens and it comes into the duodenum. The duodenum is this little section here, and the duodenum is the first part of the small intestine, and there's a lot of things happening there. So we'll write the duodenum, and if you have a look at the duodenum, you've got the liver with the gallbladder underneath, connecting with the neck of the pancreas, so they are all releasing things into the duodenum. And the duodenum is we're back to our alkaline environment. And the enzyme that's released, first of all, we're going to have a look at the liver. The gallbladder is just the reservoir of bile. It just holds the bile. It is the liver that makes the bile. So the liver, it releases bile, and bile is the enzyme that breaks down unsaturated fats. So that's the fats that's in a lot of your nuts and seeds. Also called polyunsaturated fats. The pancreas, it's also releasing some enzymes. So the pancreas releases pancreatic lipase, and pancreatic lipase further breaks down the unsaturated fat. Do you remember where the saturated fat was broken down? The breakdown began in the mouth. So for people with liver problems, for people with pancreatic problems, the best oil for them to be eating is what? Coconut. Because the coconut doesn't require bile, and the coconut doesn't require pancreatic lipase, because the coconut's breakdown began in the mouth under lingual lipase. The pancreas also releases pancreatic amylase. Now remember, the salivary amylase. The salivary amylase is ptyalin. So ptyalin began starch breakdown. But when it came into the stomach, in that acid environment, it stopped. And then it comes down to the duodenum, back into an alkaline environment, and also pancreatic amylase being released. So starch digestion is finalised with pancreatic amylase. The pancreas also releases trypsin. And trypsin is an enzyme that breaks down protein. Now, where did protein digestion begin? In the stomach. Let me show you protein digestion. Here is protein. In the stomach, under the action of pepsin, the protein was broken down to peptides and polypeptides. Peptides and polypeptides come into the duodenum, and under the action of trypsin and chymotrypsin, which is pretty similar, the peptides are broken down to amino acids, the polypeptides broken down to amino acid and peptides, and then amino acids. So see, they all play a part. But let me give you a scenario that happens so much. People are drinking with their meals, watering down the hydrochloric acid. They're just grabbing as they run because they're so busy. And because they're so busy, hydrochloric acid also is stressed, it's coming down. So what happens in the stomach? The protein's not getting broken down. So protein is coming into the duodenum. Trypsin and chymotrypsin come along and say, "What are you doing here? What are we supposed to do with this?" And the protein says, "Sorry guys, but they're drinking too much with their meals, and they're eating all day long." So trypsin and chymotrypsin do the best they can, and often they can only bring the protein down to this, and it keeps travelling. Most of our food is absorbed, I'll do this way, most of our food is absorbed halfway down the small intestine, but that can't be absorbed. Only amino acids can be absorbed. And so it ends up in the colon, and the colon says, "What are you doing here?" And protein says, "Sorry guys, they're drinking with their meals, they're eating all day long, they're stressed out, we couldn't get the breakdown, and trypsin and chymotrypsin did the best they could." So now the colon has to create a lot of bacteria to basically try and break it down or calm it down a bit until it comes out, and the person that's happening to give off a lot of wind. You know what I mean. Do you remember when one of the first things I said is we have say over what's going in the mouth and how long it's in the mouth, how well we chew. It's the only place we've got teeth. You've got no teeth in your stomach. If you don't chew, there's nowhere else that's going to chew for you. And your nuts are expensive. If you don't chew them to a cream, little bits of nuts are going to end up coming out the other end. Whoa, that was a very expensive nut. You didn't even get the nutrients out of it. Okay, students, which organ is the main organ of digestion? Pancreas. Because can you see what the pancreas does? It helps with unsaturated fat digestion. It finalises starch digestion. It finalises protein digestion. People who have pancreatic cancer or cirrhosis of the pancreas or cancer of the pancreas, they usually die very, very quickly, often within about 5 weeks of diagnosis, and they die from malnutrition. Can you see why? because they can't finalise digestion, so no nutrients are getting into the blood. Do you remember I said anything that goes into your gastrointestinal tract is not part of you or me until it gets broken down to tiny substances, then into the blood, and the blood is the life of the flesh. It's the carrier of those nutrients. But in Psalm 104 verse 14, the Bible says God made herbs for the service of man. There are some herbs that will help here. Trypsin and chymotrypsin and pepsin are what's called proteolytic enzymes. A proteolytic enzyme is an enzyme that breaks down protein. So your proteolytic enzymes are pepsin, your proteolytic enzymes are trypsin and chymotrypsin. Well, in foods, and these two foods are grown predominantly on your island, there are two foods that contain some proteolytic enzymes. One is papain from the pawpaw, from the papaya, and the other is bromelain. And bromelain comes from the neck or the core of the pineapple. So when you eat your pineapple, always eat the core. Now you'd have to eat a lot of pawpaw and you'd have to eat a lot of pineapple to get these enzymes to help someone who has a compromised pancreas. But you can buy in the health food shop, you can buy digestive enzymes. And if you look on the packet, you will see most of them have papain and bromelain in them. And now we're coming to the grand finale of digestion. Where are these nutrients absorbed? Well, I just mentioned to you, halfway down the small intestine, all your nutrients are absorbed. So what continues down is really just the roughage. Let me draw you the villi that line the small intestine. And this villi is coated with a thick turf wall. And that thick turf wall is made out of yeasts and bacteria. When we were in our mother's utero, we had no bacteria in our gut. And when we were born, we were literally showered with our mother's microorganisms. And in the first 3 days, something is released from a woman's breast called colostrum. You may have heard of it. It's a thick yellow substance and it's very, very high in healthy bacteria. And that healthy bacteria basically establishes the baby's immune system. And it coats like a thick turf wall the lining of the small intestine. And those bacteria are responsible for the final breakdown of our food, putting the final touches on it. In fact, those yeasts and bacteria help release the B vitamins. This healthy flora, bacteria, is also responsible for the absorption of our nutrients out of the gut and into the blood, because these little villi have capillaries all through them. And that's the whole purpose of digestion, is to break the food down to microscopic substances to get it into the blood, and then the blood takes it to the cell, and there's the fuel for every cell in the body. That's the process. These microorganisms are also responsible for protecting the gut from any harmful pathogens that might somehow be in the food. They are also responsible for nourishing the cells that line the gut. So they are a very important part of our gut. Hippocrates said all disease begins in the gut. Now, if someone has a compromise of their gut flora, they automatically have a compromise on the final breakdown of their food. They have a compromise on the absorption of their nutrients into the blood. They have a compromise on protection. They've lost their border protection. And the cells lying in the gut aren't getting the proper nourishment. So what would break down that gut flora? Antibiotics break it down. Statin, cholesterol-lowering drugs break it down. Contraceptive pill breaks it down. Long-term painkiller use breaks it down. Steroids do a very effective job at breaking it down. One lady said to me, I do all of that. So how can we restore that? And how do you know if it's broken down? How you know it's broken down is your bowel movements aren't what they should be. Dr. Kellogg said 3 intakes of food a day should equal 3 evacuations a day. Most people are surprised to hear that. Dr. Kellogg said if you go once a day, you're constipated. Whew. Eating 2 meals a day should be twice a day. So what should people that eat 10 times a day do? One lady said to me, I have lunch and then half an hour later I'll lose it in the toilet. I said, no, you're not losing the lunch you just ate. In fact, the lunch you just ate is still in there. Often there's 2 or 3 meals at different places in transit through the body. If someone has diarrhea, meaning that they're going 10 times a day and it's all liquid, you see what comes out of the small intestine into the large intestine, and this is the little ileocecal valve here, and the little ileocecal valve is also a double-layered valve because we don't want anything from there going back into there. So God made it a double-layered valve to prevent that. And what's coming out of there is usually fairly liquid. So one of the main functions of the colon is to take water out so stools are formed. So when someone has very runny feces and they're going several times, it's often called irritable bowel. You've heard of that? Crohn's disease, colitis, gastritis, irritation of the gastrointestinal tract. And one of the signs is they have a lot of diarrhea. I want to give you a story of a man who came from Africa, and he was 40 and he had irritable bowel. They actually classified it as gastritis. And he was on cortisone to try and calm the inflammation down. He was on anti-inflammatory medication and he just had a huge flare-up. And then he came to our retreat. But as an African man, he was very private about talking about his colon. So I had to be careful how I talked to him about it, but we needed to talk. So what I did was I said to him, I will touch base with you every day, and I just want to know how often you're going, and I just want to know, is it liquid? And he agreed to do that. Now what we did with this man, he was going 8 times a day. This is even on cortisone, prednisone, and the anti-inflammatories. We gave him a probiotic, and a probiotic powder is a powder that contains the flora that's in your gut. Usually Lactobacillus acidophilus bifidus bacterium, called the healthy or the friendly flora. You can get it in a powder form. We also gave him slippery elm. And slippery elm is the powdered bark of the slippery elm tree. And when you put water with it, it goes a little slippery. And it soothes the lining of the gastrointestinal tract. And we gave him that 4 times a day. And we also stopped his favourite foods because it happened that his favourite foods were irritating the gut. His favourite foods were, he loved sugar, refined sugar. He also just about lived on bread, so no bread, and dairy. Had a lot of milk. On the first day, he came in Sunday. We started the program on Sunday, so I saw him Monday. I said, "How are you going?" And he would always just say, "Good." I said, "How many times are you going?" He'd say, 4. Now that was pretty good, because he had been going 6 to 8 times. Second day, "How are you going?" "Good." "How many times are you going?" 4. Now, first 2 days at Misty Mountain Health Retreat, it's just juices, and I wondered if he would go more with just juices, but it seemed fine. So on Wednesday, he had breakfast and he had lunch, so no more juices, and he was going 3 times a day, and I said, "Have your movements got some form?" He said, "Yes." This is incredible. Absolutely incredible. I said to him, "I believe you could halve your anti-inflammatories if you chose to, because I have no authority over medication. Only a person does and their doctor." So he halved his anti-inflammatories. Now, if he started to go 10 times a day, we've got a choice then. He can just go back on his anti-inflammatories, or we can give him slippery elm 8 times a day, which basically is what I would choose to do. But it didn't. And I said to him, "I think you can reduce it a little bit more." And he still continued to go just 3 times a day with form. He had not known that for a long time. So after 4 days of this, I said to him, "I think you can reduce your prednisone. You have to be very, very cautious coming off that. You have to come off very, very slowly." And so he did. On Sunday morning, you could not wipe the smile off this man's face. He had no more cramping. The bleeding from his colon had stopped. He was so excited. Now, that's just in a week. You see, the cells that line the gastrointestinal tract, they're remade every 3 to 5 days. So once it's given the right conditions, it responds very, very quickly. In fact, one man got such amazing results with the slippery elm, he just carried the jar around in his hand. He says, "My best friend." Now, you have a herb on your island that is similar to slippery elm in that it coats, soothes and heals the lining, and that is aloe vera. Both aloe vera and slippery elm contain a growth stimulant, meaning it stimulates rapid healing in the lining of the gut. And we've seen many people totally heal from this. One lady said to me, "I have had colitis for 30 years. She said, "I have never heard the things that you're talking about in this lecture." She said, "No one's ever told me about these 3 foods." She said, "I have cereal for breakfast with milk on it and sugar on top, then a cup of tea with milk and sugar in it." She said, "At lunch, I have sandwiches with cheese on it and another cup of tea and then a sugar biscuit." And of course, sugar biscuits are made out of sugar and wheat. Now, I was giving public meetings, and she heard this on Tuesday night. She came to me on Thursday night. She said, "All the bleeding from my colon has stopped." She said, "I have no more cramps." And she said, "My bowel movements have halved from 8 a day to 4 a day." She was a very happy lady. How quickly the body responds when it is given the right conditions. So they are the simple things that can be implemented to conquer inflammation in the gastrointestinal tract. What if someone's not going enough? What if someone's going every second day? What if someone's going once a week? Well, our cells get into habits because we are creatures of habit. Because I've talked to people and they say, "But I'm drinking my water now, I'm having a plant-based diet, I'm exercising every day, but I'm still not going every day." Well, something can affect the colon, and that is our emotions. And the Bible says in 1 Thessalonians 5:18, "In everything give thanks." Remember I mentioned last night, if you can't sleep, thank God. Thank God for everything that's happening to you, because if you're not going every day and you thank God, you basically untie his hands and let him work in your life. So what you can do to help things along a bit is you can apply a casserole compress. So when you apply a casserole compress to the colon or to the abdomen, so it goes through and into the colon, and it can break up congestion in the area, it can help to soften the stools. But if someone hasn't been for a couple of days, they can do something that will get their colon moving very, very quickly. And that is they can just do an enema. An enema is just putting warm water up into the colon. It softens what's there, because remember, the longer it's sitting there, the more water gets taken out. So we're left with rabbit pellets and cement. So that's a simple thing you can do. And there's another thing you can do. It's called drinking an isotonic solution. And you drink this over half an hour in the morning, and usually within half to 1 hour, you're going. And it's a 2-litre drink. Yes, you have to drink these 2 litres over half an hour, but it's a guaranteed will move you. It's 1/3 seawater. Yes, collected from the sea. 1/3 seawater, 1/3 boiling water, and 1/3 cold water. So it's a warm, salty drink, and you drink it. Now, if you find that a little bit hard, you might find a glass of prune juice will do it. What can also do it is aloe vera. Now, just under the lining of the leaf, there's a yellow substance, and it's very, very bitter, and it stimulates the colon. So someone with irritable bowel, they don't want that yellow. But if someone can't go, they might find taking the aloe with a little bit of that yellow will do it. And remember, relax. And thank God every day for your gastrointestinal tract. You see, this gastrointestinal tract, it needs to be swept every day, and it is fibre that sweeps it. Now, a lot of colons aren't in the habit of going because in times past, if the person felt to go, they were going to go in a minute. They've got to finish the phone call, they've got to finish the email, they've got to finish watching whatever they're watching, then they'll go. And if you notice, when they go, they can't go. Because when you feel to go, this area here, especially this end area, is filled up. And if you don't go, then the contents can't stay there because it will weaken your anal sphincter. So it goes back up here. And that's why you can't go. So it's very important to promptly answer nature's immediate call. When your body says go, you got to go. And many people don't. And then they lose that reflex as it should be. Notice down here, there's a little red muscle that I've drawn in there. It's called puborectalis. And we are so glad that God gave us that little muscle because it prevents accidents, because it holds up that last section of the colon. And when we're sitting on the throne, okay, here's the throne. When we're sitting on the throne in that position, puborectalis is still taut, but things can still get through. But if you're sitting on the throne and you have a little stool in front of you so that your knees are up and you are mimicking the squatting position, what that does, can't find my red. Thank you very much. When your knees are up and you're mimicking the squatting position, puborectalis relaxes. And when puborectalis relaxes, then the colon opens and the contents that can be passed with great ease. When I travel to Africa and I go into the toilets there, I see a hole in the ground. It's all tiled, it's all flush. And when I have been in India, I've seen the same thing. And when I've been in Singapore, I've seen the same thing. So there are many countries who traditionally always squatted to go, but there are many countries who still do. Science now shows us why it's a superior way to do your daily evacuation, because it relaxes puborectalis, which allows the contents to start with ease, to evacuate with ease. But something else it does, it takes all the pressure off the anus. Now let's say this person hasn't been to the toilet for 2 days, and they decide to help things along a bit and strain. All that does is put enormous pressure on here, and then these horrible little bubbles can pop out called hemorrhoids. So what squatting does is it prevents hemorrhoids, and what squatting does is it allows hemorrhoids to heal because the pressure is no longer there. In Australia we have, and I know in America they have shops called Bed Bath and Beyond, and they sell something called Squatty Potty. And Squatty Potty is a little stool that basically fits around, anyway, I'm not a great drawer, something like that. Or you can just get a little stool and put it in front like that. What would someone do if they had hemorrhoids? Definitely begin to squat when you go, but also you can cut slithers of aloe vera, peel it and cut slithers about the size of the little finger and freeze it. And when it's frozen, just before the person goes to sleep at night, that they can insert that aloe vera, and that will bring great relief to hemorrhoids and help them to heal. The other thing you can do is you can get a cotton ball and you can soak it in castor oil. And Jamaica is the home of castor oil, surely, isn't it? And you can soak that in castor oil and mould it so it's like the little finger and freeze it. It will take 3 days to freeze. And when it's frozen, before you go to sleep at night, you can insert that into the anus and hold it there all night. When you do your daily evacuation, it'll come out. But meanwhile, while you're sleeping, it can heal. You might do aloe one night, castor oil another, you might alternate it like that. And at the same time, start drinking more water. At the same time, start going to bed earlier. At the same time, eat a plant-based diet. You see, all plant-based foods ferment when they break down. And that is not toxic to the body, especially when the colon's working as well as it should. But when meat and meat products break down, they putrefy, and that gives off toxic fumes. And there's no fibre, so they can easily get caught in these little grooves here. In fact, meat eating is the main cause of colorectal cancer. In America, where they have a high meat diet and a high refined diet, colorectal cancer is the number 2 killer. And when I was in the supermarket the other day and saw all these bright coloured packages, I know that it's all refined food. And so ends our journey of the gastrointestinal tract. I thus you've enjoyed our journey, and I thus your minds have been opened as to just what's going on down in there, and the absolute importance of showing respect to these delicate organs of digestion so you can get the most out of your food, so your cells are well nourished, your brain's well nourished, and you can fulfill God's promise for you, found in 3 John chapter 1 verse 2, Beloved, I wish above all things that thou mayst prosper and be in health, even as thy soul prospers. Thank you.
Amen. Let's give another amen, another big hand, won't we? Usually for the announcement of this continuous program, we lift an offering at this time. We do know that you have been planning for this. Each night you go into your hearts and into your pockets at the same time and make a contribution for the furtherance of this program and this evening we are going to be doing just that. So we are going to ask at this time that the individuals who have been assigned to lift the offering come and get that done. If you bow your heads with me, we will pray. Let us pray. We thank you, loving Heavenly Father, for this evening. We thank you for the gifts that you have given us to return for the furtherance of your cause here for this program. Please bless us and grant, O Lord, that as we give, we will give not of the abundance, but of the kindness of our hearts. And may we do so with a cheerful spirit. Do bless, we ask, in Christ's name. Amen.
For those who have completed the surveys, we're just going to ask that you just raise them and the ushers will come and collect them. Those who have their surveys, you have completed them, just raise them. Or ushers on the outside, they will be coming to collect them. So, and then we are opening up for sales on the outside. But we want to collect all the surveys tonight as quickly as possible. Just work with us in that way.
They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. Teach me, Lord, how to wait. Yes, my Lord. Little Job was sick so long, till his flesh fell from his bone. He asked her to the crown of his head. And no matter how long he takes, Job say, I will surely wait. Teach me, Lord, how to wait. Yes, my Lord. If you're sick and you can't get well, and your doctor cannot tell, turn it over to the Lord. He will hear you. I know He will. I no matter how long He takes, God will hear you if you wait. Teach me, Lord, how to wait. If your body in aches and pain, and your health you can't regain, turn it over to the Lord. He will hear you. I know He will. And no matter how long He takes, my God will hear you if you wait. Teach me, Lord, how to wait. They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagle. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. Teach me, Lord, how to wait. Teach me, Lord, how to wait.
Negative.
You do. I've got two here. Let's start with these. Okay, we're going to do some question and answers now. I removed a sebaceous cyst some years ago. It has returned. What do you suggest I can do to remove it naturally? Well, again, in the case of sickness, the cause should be ascertained. Unhealthful conditions change, wrong habits corrected, then nature is to be assisted in her efforts to expel impurities and re-establish right conditions back in the system. So again, it's important to investigate why the cysts are there. Sometimes there can be an inherited factor, but often there is a hormone factor. And if the hormones aren't balanced right, the cysts will keep coming back. Casserole can often take them away. So my suggestion is just keep applying casserole, implement those very powerful New Start program, and maybe look at getting that Anna's Wild Yam cream to balance the hormones. And the next one is, how is it possible that someone on a high-fibre vegan diet ends up with a fecal impaction? There can be a few reasons for that. I find that some people contact me that they're getting problems on the vegan diet, but then I found out that they ate really badly for 20 years and they've only been on the vegan diet for 2 years, so there's still a ramification or a consequence or a result of not eating well for so long that can have already done some damage in the colon. Also stress. I'm a colonic irrigation therapist and I teach this, and my teacher, who died 6 years ago at the age of 92, she used to say, tight mind, tight colon. So your emotions absolutely affect the colon. So even though someone can be eating a vegan diet, if they're anxious and stressed out, because we often say, I've got a gut feeling about this. Our emotions and our gut are very closely connected, so it could be emotions. Terrible burning on the soles of the feet.